Be me, Brennan, 29. Work in IT, nothing glamorous. Support role at a mid-sized company, mostly fixing things other people broke. Not the guy who walks into a room and everyone turns around. Just steady, reliable, shows up on time, does what he says. Always been like that. My dad was the same way. He used to say the most important thing a man can do is be someone people can count on. I don't know if that's profound or just common sense. Either way, it stuck. Been with Avery for 2 years before the engagement. We met through mutual friends at some gathering I almost didn't go to. Derek dragged me out. Said I needed to stop spending every weekend on my couch watching documentaries about engineering disasters. He wasn't wrong. Avery was there with a friend of a friend. She was confident in a way that was hard to ignore. Had an opinion on everything, didn't wait to be asked. I found it refreshing, honestly. We talked for a long time that evening. She was smart, funny in a dry way, didn't take herself too seriously. Or so I thought. We started dating not long after. First several months were good. She had strong opinions about things, but it felt like energy, like someone who was actually engaged with the world. I had spent time with people who seemed to move through life without really caring about anything. She wasn't like that. We argued sometimes, but the kind where both people actually listen to what the other is saying. She pushed back on things I said. I pushed back on things she said. It felt like being taken seriously. I liked that. She had a job she cared about, friends she was loyal to, her own schedule she didn't rearrange for anyone. I respected all of that. I'm not someone who wants a partner who orbits around me. I want someone who has their own life and chooses to share it. That's what I thought I had. We traveled a couple of times. She was good company on trips, didn't need everything planned out, comfortable with things going sideways. One time we got stranded at an airport for 6 hours due to a delay. She pulled out a book, offered me half her snacks, and didn't complain once. I thought, if we can do 6 hours in an airport without irritating each other, we can probably do most things. By the time we'd been together a year and a half, I knew I wanted to marry her. Had the ring for 3 weeks before I actually used it. Kept waiting for some movie moment. Sunset somewhere, a trip, a special dinner. None of those felt right. One evening we were just sitting in the kitchen after dinner. She was reading something on her phone. I was looking at nothing in particular. And I thought, this is it. This is actually the moment. Not because it was dramatic, because it was just real. Got up, went to my jacket in the hallway, came back. She looked up. I said what I wanted to say, didn't have a speech prepared. She said yes. We sat there for a while after that, not really doing anything, just existing in it. It was a good night. Started planning the next morning, opened a new spreadsheet. I'm a spreadsheet person, always have been. I like having information organized where I can see it. It calms me down. Made columns for everything I could think of. Venue, date, capacity, deposit amount, deposit deadline, balance due, contact name, contact phone, contact email, notes. Then, another sheet for catering, another for photography, another for music, another for flowers, another for invitations and printing, another for accommodation, because some guests would be coming from out of town. Derek came over a couple weeks into it, looked at my screen for a while, said it looked like I was planning the invasion of somewhere. I said I just liked having it organized. He said that was either the most romantic or most IT brain thing he'd ever seen. Probably both. Started making calls. Venues first, because those book up the fastest. Called probably a dozen places over a few weeks. Some were too small for the guest list we were thinking. Some were booked out already. Some had prices that would have required selling one of my kidneys. Finally found one that looked promising. Good reviews online, pictures looked decent. Outdoor space for the ceremony and indoor space for the reception. Price was in range. Called the coordinator, got a lot of the basic questions answered. Sent Avery a link to the website with some notes. She looked at the pictures and said it reminded her of a corporate event space. Okay, started looking again. Second place, she said, felt too formal. Third one, the location wasn't right. Something about the neighborhood. I asked what specifically. She said she just got a vibe. I said, okay. Fourth venue I went to see in person on my own, before even bringing it up. Drove out on a weekday evening after work. Walked through the space, talked to the coordinator, took photos of everything. The garden, the hall, the bridal suite, the kitchen area, the parking situation, came home, put together a little summary with the photos organized by room, sent it to Avery. She said it seemed okay, but she'd want to see it in person. We never went. Something came up the first time we were supposed to go. Then it slipped, then I stopped pushing, moved on to a fifth option. The photographer search took on its own life. I'd assumed you just find someone with a good portfolio, agree on a price, done. That's not how it works. Good photographers book out 6 months to a year in advance for weddings. The ones with availability at short notice are either new or there's a reason they're available. I made a short list of 7, requested quotes from all of them. 3 didn't respond, 2 responded with prices that were out of range. 1 responded with a questionnaire that was longer than my tax return. The 7th was actually good. Portfolio was solid, price was reasonable. She'd shot a lot of weddings and could show you the full gallery, not just the best 10 photos. I had a call with her, went through the details, sent Avery her portfolio link. Avery looked through it and said the style felt a little traditional, that she wanted something more editorial. I asked what editorial meant in this context. She said she'd know it when she saw it. I went back to looking, found 2 more photographers who fit closer to what I had understood editorial to mean. Sent them. She said one was too staged and one was good, but she'd want to look at more of their work before deciding. I sent her more of their work. She said she'd circle back. She didn't. I eventually booked the 7th one who I'd originally found. Avery never specifically objected to her again, so I took that as close enough to a yes. The music situation was its own thing. Avery wanted live music during the ceremony. I asked what kind. She said something acoustic, not a full band. I found a guy through a recommendation from the venue coordinator. He played guitar, had a clean setup, sent me a list of songs he knew. I sent the list to Avery. She said the song list was very standard and she wanted something with more personality. I asked if she had specific songs in mind. She sent me a short list. I forwarded the list to him and asked if he knew them or could learn them. He said 2 of the 5 he knew well, 2 he could learn with time, 1 he'd never heard of. I told Avery. She said that wasn't ideal. I suggested we figure out a compromise with him. She said she'd think about it. She didn't bring it up again. I confirmed with him on the original set and moved on. Around this time, somewhere in the first few months after the engagement, Avery started a blog. I don't remember the exact timing. She had mentioned wanting to write publicly for a while. The blog was about relationships and what she called reclaiming the narrative around women's experiences. The first few posts I actually thought were interesting. She was a good writer, had a clear voice. One early post was about wedding traditions and how a lot of them historically centered the groom's family and the groom's preferences. How modern women should take ownership of the day instead of letting it be shaped by everyone else's expectations. She showed me the post when she published it. I read it, said it was well written. She seemed like she wanted more of a reaction. I didn't know what else to say. I thought it was fine. Went back to the spreadsheet. The pattern with planning was becoming clearer around this time. I'd find something, present it, she'd have a problem with it. Then she'd say she'd look into alternatives. And then nothing would happen. The caterer is a good example. Spent time researching, read a lot of reviews, called a few places. Found one with a good reputation and a menu that wasn't the same tired chicken or fish setup. Called them, talked through options, got a quote that was reasonable. Sent Avery the menu by message. Few days went by. She said the food felt too heavy. Wanted something lighter and more seasonal. I asked if she had a specific caterer in mind. She said she'd look into it. Week went by. I asked if she'd found anything. She said she'd been busy with work. I said no problem and kept the original caterer holding the date while I waited. Another week. Still nothing. I eventually just confirmed with the original caterer and moved on. I didn't tell her I'd done that. Figured if she found someone she preferred, I could switch. She never did. This was the rhythm for months. Me finding things, her finding problems, me absorbing the problems and finding new things, me sending messages that got read and not answered, me following up and being told she'd been busy, me going back to the spreadsheet and adding another row. I'm not describing this to make her sound like a villain. It just became the way things worked. And I kept going because I wanted the wedding to happen, simple as that. There was also the guest list situation. We'd agreed roughly on a number, around 80 people. I started building the list on my side, asked Avery to send me hers. She said she'd get to it. Few weeks went by. I asked again. She said she'd been meaning to. I said no rush, just need it for the venue capacity. Another few weeks. She sent me a list with 53 names on it. No addresses, no +1 notes, no indication of who was family versus friend versus colleague. I spent a couple of evenings cleaning it up and cross-referencing with what I knew. She also had 3 people on the list I'd never heard of. Asked her who they were. She said they were people from her online community, people she'd connected with through the blog. I asked if she knew them in person. She said she felt like she knew them. They'd been communicating for months. I said, okay, and kept them on the list. The invitations were another project. Needed to pick a design, get them printed, address them, mail them. I found a printer, picked a design that felt right, sent Avery a few options to choose between. She said they all felt a bit generic and she'd want to look at some other options. I sent different options. She said she'd look when she had time. Time passed. I eventually picked one, ordered a proof, got her approval on the proof by holding my phone in front of her face until she nodded. That counts. Ordered the full batch. The invitations were sitting addressed and ready to go in a box in the hallway. They never got sent, because 2 weeks before the date, I canceled everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself, specifically how it shows up in relationships in ways that look helpful but are actually controlling. One post was about how, when a male partner takes over planning something, even with good intentions, it can be a way of centering his preferences and removing the woman's agency. She used the word overreach. I read that one a few times. I was the one who had spent the last several months calling venues and building spreadsheets because every time I asked if she wanted to take something on, she said she'd get to it. I kept that thought to myself, commented on the post that it was an interesting perspective. She said thanks. The venue situation came to a head not long after. I'd been working on finding the right place for a while, had a few conversations with a coordinator, negotiated some of the terms, got them to throw in a few extras, put down a deposit to hold the date, $800, non-refundable, called Avery and asked if she wanted to come see it that weekend. She said yes. We drove out on a Saturday morning, walked through the whole space together. I was watching her the whole time trying to get a read. She was quiet, but not obviously unhappy. Asked a couple of questions about the layout. We went through the garden, the main hall, the back room where the cocktail hour would be. On the way out to the parking lot, she took out her phone. She was just ahead of me. She was typing something fast, clearly a message to someone. I wasn't trying to read it, but I could see the screen from where I was walking. Something to the effect that she'd come to look at the place out of politeness, and a laughing emoji after it. I didn't say anything, just kept walking, got in the car. She said the venue was okay, but maybe not quite right. I asked what wasn't right. She said she just didn't connect with it. I said, okay. Drove home mostly in silence. That evening she posted on the blog about how important it is for a woman not to let her partner's vision override her own feeling about the wedding, about how men mean well but often don't grasp the emotional dimension of the day, about how small acts of imposition, like pushing a particular venue, are a form of what she called low-level toxic behavior. The comments were mostly people agreeing. A few people sharing their own stories. I read the whole thread, then I closed the laptop. Didn't sleep well that night. A few days after that, she sat down across from me at the kitchen table, said she'd been thinking, said she wanted to take over the planning, said it was her day, her vision, and it would mean more to her if it came from her. That I'd still be there, she just wanted to be the one to build it. I looked at her. She looked back at me. I said, okay. She seemed like she expected me to argue, asked if I was really sure. I said, yeah, if that's what you want, then go for it. It's your day. She said great, said she was going to make it something really special. I said I was sure she would. She went to get her laptop, I assumed to start looking at things. I went to the other room, sat down at my desk, pulled up the spreadsheet. 47 rows across all the sheets. Deposits, confirmations, contact names I'd talked to enough times that they recognized my voice when I called. Sat there for a while, not in a dramatic way, just sitting. Then I picked up my phone, called the venue coordinator. He picked up right away. We'd talked enough that he knew who I was. I said I needed to cancel the booking. He paused, asked if everything was all right. I said yes, just a change in direction. He said the deposit was non-refundable per the contract. I said I understood. He said he was sorry it didn't work out. I said thanks and hung up. Then the caterer explained that plans had changed, asked about the deposit situation. They said they could return a partial amount since it was still a ways out. I said that was fine. Then the photographer, then the florist, then the guy who was going to play guitar during the ceremony. A few other smaller things. Every call was short. I kept it factual, didn't explain more than necessary. A couple of the vendors asked if something had happened. I said it was just a change in direction. One of them, the caterer, said they hoped everything was okay. I said everything was fine. He said to reach out if we rescheduled and he'd see what he could do. I said I appreciated that. Hung up. There were a few smaller things too. A transportation company I'd been in conversation with about getting people from the hotel to the venue. A person who'd agreed to do the cake tasting with us the following week. A hotel block I'd negotiated for out-of-town guests. All of it. Every thread I'd pulled together over 8 months. By the time I was done, the spreadsheet had no confirmed bookings in it. I didn't delete it. I just looked at the empty confirmation column for a while. The cells that used to say confirmed or deposit paid were blank. I scrolled through all 47 rows. Then I went to bed. Derek figured it out before I told him. I'd made some offhand comment about the planning, and he'd asked a follow-up question I couldn't answer naturally. He called me later that evening. There was a pause after I confirmed what I'd done. He said he didn't know whether I was the smartest or most unhinged person he knew. I said probably both. Seemed to be a theme. He asked if I was okay. I said I was fine, genuinely. He said he'd keep it to himself. He did. Life went on without much visible change. Avery was busy with work, with friends, with the blog. The blog had picked up some momentum, more followers, more comments. She was enjoying it, you could tell. There was a post around this time about taking ownership of the planning process, about how empowering it felt to build something entirely on her own terms, about how she was learning to trust her own instincts instead of defaulting to her partner's framework. It got a lot of positive response. She showed me that one too. I said it sounded like she was really finding her voice. She said, yeah, that's exactly what it felt like. I made coffee. She mentioned once that she was going to start calling vendors that weekend. Something came up. She didn't get to it. The following week, she said she'd been swamped with something at work. I said, take your time. The week after that, she mentioned she'd been making a mood board to get clarity on the aesthetic before she started locking things in. Made sense to me. I didn't offer to help. She didn't ask. She had a friend over one evening who was also engaged. They sat in the living room for a couple of hours going through wedding photos on their phones, talking about colors and table settings and ceremony structures. I was in the other room. I could hear them laughing at things. At one point, Avery said something about how she was taking full ownership of her wedding, and it was going to feel completely like her. Her friend said that was so healthy. I made dinner, didn't say anything. Derek texted me around that time, asking how the planning was going. I texted back one word, good. He sent back a question mark. I didn't respond. He called me that evening. I said Avery had taken it over. He said that was great, less work for me. I said yeah. He asked if I was doing okay. I said fine. He paused long enough that I knew he wasn't buying it, but he let it go. There were moments where it was strange, watching her scroll through wedding photos, saving things to a folder on her phone, looking genuinely excited about the vision, not knowing what I knew. She had a whole system on her phone, different folders for different aspects of the day. One for ceremony setups, one for table arrangements, one for florals, one for dresses she liked. I saw her phone screen one evening while she was showing me a photo of something unrelated. She had hundreds of saved images, hundreds. I thought about the caterer's menu sitting unread for a week, about the venue photos I'd organized by room that she'd looked at once, about the florist quotes she'd said she'd circle back on. There was a lot of vision, a lot of saved images, not a lot of phone calls getting made. I thought about saying something. Specifically, I thought about pointing out that vision without logistics is just a mood board, but every time I got close to saying it, I heard her voice in my head, saying I was imposing my framework. So I kept it to myself. I went to bed a lot of evenings during that period feeling like I was carrying something heavy in both hands, and wasn't allowed to put it down or ask for help. That was the actual feeling, if I'm honest. I thought about Derek's look from months earlier, the one where he asked why I was still doing all of it. Started to understand what he was seeing that I wasn't. Made more coffee. And the blog post about toxic behavior. And the 8 months of calls and spreadsheet rows. And her saying, without any hesitation, that it was her day and I was just standing next to her. And I'd decide not to say anything. Made more coffee. About 2 weeks before the wedding date, she called the florist. She told me about it after, sitting in the kitchen, phone in her hand. Said she'd wanted to confirm the bouquet details. And the florist told her the order had been canceled. She assumed it was an error, called back, got the same answer. Then she called the venue. I heard her voice from the next room, the shift in it. She came in holding her phone. Her face was doing something I hadn't seen before. Not exactly anger, not exactly panic. Something between them. She asked what was going on. I said I wasn't sure what she meant. She said the venue had no current booking under our names. I said, yeah, I canceled it. She asked when. I said it was a while back, after she told me she was taking over. Her voice went quiet in that specific way voices go quiet when someone is working very hard to stay in control of them. She said she hadn't meant for me to cancel everything. I said she'd told me it was her day, and she'd handle it. She said that wasn't what she meant. I asked what she had meant then. She didn't answer right away. Then she asked about the caterer. Canceled. The photographer. Canceled. The rest of it. All of it. She sat down at the kitchen table. Same table as before. Didn't say anything for a while. Then she called her mom. I went to the kitchen to give her space. Could hear parts of the call. Her mom's voice getting sharper on the other end. Avery explaining, then going quieter while her mom talked. The call lasted a while. When it was over, Avery came and said her mom was going to make some calls. I nodded. Her mom called several venues over the next couple of days. Avery gave me updates without being asked. Everywhere was either fully booked or quoting prices significantly higher than what we'd been working with months earlier. 2 weeks out, for a party of around 80 people, is not a realistic timeline. Anyone who has planned an event knows this. Avery knew it too by the end of the second day of calls. Her mom stopped calling after the third day. Avery told me her mom had said there was nothing to be done at this point. That was a quiet evening. She also told her blog followers that the wedding was being postponed for personal reasons. No details. The comments were full of supportive messages, people saying they were there for her. One person asked if she was okay. She responded that she was working through some things. I saw all of this because she still had notifications coming through on her laptop, which was open on the kitchen counter. I didn't bring it up. Avery came to me a couple of evenings after the florist call. We sat at the kitchen table again. She said she'd been thinking about everything. Said she understood now that there had been a lot of work happening that she hadn't been tracking. I didn't respond immediately. Let the sentence exist for a moment. Then I said, yeah, there was quite a bit of it. She said she was sorry for not recognizing it. I said I heard her. She said that wasn't an excuse. She was just explaining where she'd been mentally. I said I understood. Long pause. She asked why I didn't just say something directly instead of canceling everything. Fair question. I said I had said things. For 8 months. That every time I brought something to the table, the response was usually some version of, I didn't understand the vision, or I was imposing my taste, or she'd handle it and then didn't. She didn't argue with that. I told her about the parking lot. The message I'd seen on her phone to her friend. She didn't deny it, said she'd been frustrated that day. I said, okay. Then I told her that reading her blog posts every week and seeing the things I was doing, described as examples of toxic behavior and male overreach, while I was sitting at my desk managing 47 rows of logistics, was a specific kind of feeling I didn't have a great word for. She started to say the blog wasn't about me specifically. I said I knew that, but some of it kinda was. She stopped. There was a long pause. She said she could see that now. I said I wasn't asking her to take the posts down or apologize for them. I was just telling her that it landed a certain way, that coming home after a 2-hour call with a venue coordinator, and then reading that men who take initiative in planning are exhibiting controlling behavior. That was a strange experience to sit with repeatedly. She said she hadn't been thinking about how I'd read those posts. I said I figured. She said that was on her. I didn't argue with that. Another pause. She asked what I actually needed going forward. I said I needed to feel like what I contributed was visible, not celebrated, not thanked after every task. Just visible. Like if I'm handling something, the person I'm handling it for knows I'm handling it, and considers whether it might be worth acknowledging occasionally. She said she understood that. I said I hoped so. We sat there for a while. I wasn't running on anger at that point. Anger had come and gone months before. What I was running on was something more like exhaustion and a question. The question being whether any of this was something we could actually work through. She asked what we were going to do. I said I needed some time to think about that, honestly. She asked if I still wanted to get married. I said I needed a bit of time with that question. She nodded. Didn't push. That was something I noticed. She didn't push. Derek came by a few days later. We sat outside for a while. He didn't ask for the full play-by-play. He'd been following enough of it to have a general picture. He asked how I was holding up. I said, honestly, I didn't know. Not in a bad way. More like I hadn't had time to figure out what I actually felt about everything. He said that was probably normal. Then he said something about how his mom had told him once that the thing that makes a relationship work long-term is when both people operate on the assumption that the other person is doing their half and stop keeping score. He wasn't directing that at me specifically, or maybe he was a little. He just said it the way you say something you've been thinking about and finally found a place to put. I thought about it. We sat there a while longer. He asked if I thought we'd get through it. I said I genuinely didn't know. He said he hoped we would. I said I appreciated that. He said if it didn't work out, he'd still come to whatever post-breakup drinking I organized. I laughed. First time I'd laughed in a while. A few days after that, I was at my parents' place for dinner. Hadn't told my parents the full story, just that things were complicated and the wedding was on hold for now. My mom pulled me aside before I left. She said she'd heard bits and pieces, didn't ask me to fill in the rest. She just said she hoped whoever I ended up with understood what it meant that I'd kept a spreadsheet with 47 rows in it, and that not every person would do that, and that whoever got that from me should know what they had. I didn't say anything, just nodded, drove home, sat in the car in the driveway for a while before going in. The spreadsheet is still on my laptop. I never deleted it. I don't know exactly why, maybe because it's the most honest record of what that period actually looked like. Not the blog posts, not the arguments, not the things people said, just 47 rows of work. The wedding didn't happen on the date we had. We're still talking, slowly. Some of it has been hard to say and harder to hear, but we're talking. Whether that goes somewhere, I genuinely can't tell you. I'm not going to pretend I have it figured out. I know people want a clean resolution at the end of one of these. Guy stands up for himself, everything clicks into place, lesson learned. Real life doesn't really do that. What I can tell you is that some things shifted. She hasn't posted on the blog since the cancellation. I don't know if that means something or nothing. There was one evening a week or so after everything came out. We were sitting in the kitchen, not talking about any of it for once. Just being in the same space. She said she didn't realize how much I'd been carrying. I said, I know. She said she was sorry. I said I heard her. It wasn't a big moment, just a quiet one. But it was real. And I'll take real over dramatic any day. She also said something that surprised me. Said she'd been thinking about some of the posts she'd written, that in retrospect, she could see she'd been using big language for small things. Words like overreach and toxic behavior for situations that were just two people trying to figure out how to plan something together. She said she didn't think she'd been wrong about the larger ideas, but that the way she'd applied them maybe wasn't entirely fair. I said I appreciated her saying that. I didn't say much more, didn't want to turn it into a debate about the blog. She'd said what she said, and I'd heard it. That was enough for that evening. The ring is still in my drawer. I didn't give it back, she didn't ask for it. It's just sitting there. I look at it sometimes when I'm getting socks, not in a loaded dramatic way. It's just there, a small fact. I know one thing for certain going forward. I'm not rebuilding that spreadsheet until I'm sure the person I'm building it for actually knows it exists. Not in a vague general way, in a real specific I see what you're doing way. That's the difference. The difference between someone who benefits from your reliability and someone who actually values it. I didn't know those were two different things until recently. I thought if you just kept doing the work, eventually the work would speak for itself. Turns out work is pretty quiet. It just sits there in a spreadsheet on your laptop while the other person writes blog posts about their vision. And that's fine. People communicate differently, people show up differently, but at some point the work needs to be seen. Not praised, not rewarded, just seen. That's a pretty basic thing to ask for. I think I'm allowed to ask for it. That's the whole story. I don't have a clean ending for you. Real life doesn't usually come with one. If you're in something like this, I don't know what to tell you. Every situation is different, and anyone who says otherwise is selling something. I just know that being reliable and being invisible aren't supposed to be the same thing. And somewhere along the way they became the same thing for me. That's the part I'm still sitting with.